Yeah, I'm a member of Essex County Council.
Okay, that brings us to the next item on the agenda, which is item number 3, the new Local Plan Regulation 18 Statement of Consultation. Okay. Do we have any questions regarding the item number 3? Councillor Tanner?
Well, look, call me provocative, but shouldn't the consultation come before the house building?
Do we have an answer?
So the position Basildon Council finds itself in is the fact that the council worked on a local plan up until 2022, and that local plan set out policies and future allocations for housing sites within that local plan, which were evidence-led, and the plan had been submitted to the Secretary of State and for submission to be heard at an examination in public. A decision of full council was made to withdraw that local plan in March 2022. That led the council with the position where we were planless, and the only plan that we have got is a plan that is from 1998, which is, I think, currently the second oldest in the country, and therefore we have no local plan. A local plan more than 5 years old carries very little weight. What the council did have was an evidence base that led to a spatial strategy being accepted in a local plan that was submitted to the Secretary of State. So what happened is the fact that we were running alongside, as we are at the moment, a number of applications or pre-apps or discussions with developers on sites that would have fitted into the local plans, had the plan been adopted through examination in public. A number of those applications have been approved. They were approved on appeal by the Secretary of State, and also a number of applications that have come forward based on those appeal decisions have been allowed by the council, by the planning committee, and they've been approved. Now, quite rightly, they are part of the spatial strategy that was set out in the previous local plan, but those developments meet the NPPF requirements, and therefore planning permission has been granted. So I accept the comments of the member that the spatial strategy in this plan, which is set out in purely in a using rather large parcels, is in part being developed, but that's not the considerations that are in front of the consultation that were undertaken by the residents and also our stakeholders and our other consultee responders that respond to a local plan at Reg 18 and Reg 18.1 and Reg 18.2. So it's not the fact that this has come after residential development's been approved. This is looking at the future of the council in terms of its housing growth from 2023 to 2043. So all the development hasn't come forward. Only a proportion of development has come forward, and that was already examined, went through a significant amount of consultation prior to 2022.
Councillor Tanner?
Yeah, I mean, I don't accept that. You know I don't. And the reason I don't accept it is because the way the procedures laid out is Regulation 18 comes before house building. It's as simple as that. And the reason it's done like that is so that people can be consulted, specifically on the bigger applications. Now, what we're in danger here of is a planning department pushing through these huge parcels of land for approval, and they will be approved, you know they will, before anybody's had the chance for consultation or feedback. And the way that the timing's laid out is that some of these parcels of land will come and go in approvals before we've had any chance of feedback. So, I don't know, let me ask another question. How much in terms of years supply do we have in housing now? It was 3.6 years. How many are we looking at?
The most recent 5-year housing land supply, which is based on 1st of April 2024, is 1.88 years against the current standard method. We are currently reviewing the 5-year land supply and we will be taking that to council in due course. I would expect that to have improved slightly, but we are still significantly short of 5-year land supply.
Yes, Councillor Thomas.
Okay, listen, that's not good enough, is it? You're telling me that you took a point in time last year, April 24. Did I hear that correctly?
5-year housing land supplies have to be based on a particular base date for 1 year. So the last complete adopted supply for this council, the base date was the 1st of April 2024.
As I said, it's not good enough, is it? Because we've had all these applications in the Greenbelt, significant applications, which have been approved, and you're telling the committee that we've got 1.8 years of land supply. Now, that will have moved on significantly. And we know what that would be, don't we, at today's date? You could actually project that forward quite easily. You don't have to wait for another year's point in time. Because of the land that's coming forward and the housing that's coming forward, and even as you said yourself, the number of pre-applications that you're in discussions, you could project all this quite simply. And that, I'm finished, and that's the bit that councillors really need to know to make certain discussions and decisions, particularly on consultation 18. Because what it does, it informs the council whether it should at this stage say, actually we could defend some of these applications on appeal if we had an up-to-date land supply that was nearer the 5 years. Because if you stretch the imagination, that's how we lose appeals, because we go to appeal and supposedly the inspector says we don't have a 5-year land supply. So we've now gone a year past that point in time where you counted the housing. But you know, we could have 2 columns I've got in my head, and one says where we are to date with the actual applications that have been approved, and what over the next year perhaps are the applications that are likely to come forward. We've just seen Langdon Road come forward. We've got London Road, it's 500 houses on, pretty much 500 houses on each site. These are significant developments. And when you take into account that a year's supply is going to be, what, 300? 1,000. Is that based on the 27,000 homes over the next 30 years?
That's based on our. Sorry, that's based on our housing need. So it's an awful to get to the and also if the 500 are approved as an outline planning consent, that's not a full planning consent. And what your 5-year housing land supply is when that housing is delivered. So when you look at 500 homes, so let's look at Dunton Road, which is one which has been allowed an appeal. Dunton Road was allowed an appeal in 2023, and Dunton Road is now just about to start delivering homes, but they're not complete. So that's 2 years from the approval of on appeal. It takes them that long to get the sites ready for housing delivery. Normally your housing delivery takes 18 months from consent to start, and then within your first year you get about 35 units out of the scheme, and the second year you'll get 70, and the 70 will continue. So build out actually isn't, you won't get 500 homes built in one go, and your land supply deals with the how those sites are going to be delivered, not the number of planning permissions. And in terms of the applications and the pre-apps, everything we've got working alongside the local plan, is the fact that for an allocation to move into a local plan, it has to be proven to be deliverable and developable. And the best way of usually providing that is you work alongside the local authority, and you either do it through a pre-app or a planning performance agreement to prove that development is deliverable and developable. So we go through all the preamble work with the sites to make sure that the sites that are coming forward are actually able to be developed out in our plan period. And obviously we have to be very much aware of the plan period, because obviously there's significant changes to the planning process in terms of flooding, in terms of biodiversity, that have impacted site delivery. So really the fact that we've got a number of applications currently or pre-apps with the council is actually a good sign, because what it means is the fact that developers are looking very carefully at these sites to prove that they can come forward within that the timescale set out in our plan. So it's not a case they're all going to come flooding at once. They won't. They will all come forward at the right times. And just having even if I think if you added all I think we've looked at it before, I think we get to about just over 2 years. So if you looked at if you added in the consents that have been approved since then, you'd get to about 2 years. That's nowhere near 5 years. Even if we had 5 years, what would still go against us in decisions is a lack of a local plan. That would still go against us. And an inspector could still, and probably would still, seek to allow an appeal based on the fact we haven't got an up-to-date local plan. So I think in real terms that the position the council is taking at the moment is the fact that we are looking very carefully at sites. We're looking very carefully at when sites come forward, and we're making sure those sites are developed out to the best they can be in terms of our ambitions. And also we're making sure that in advance of a local plan, we've got clear infrastructure requirements set against those schemes.
Thank you. So a couple of things you said there. One, we are never going to get to a 5-year land supply. That's effectively what you said. The way that it builds up arithmetically, we're never going to get to a 5-year land supply. And that's fact. The other thing is, 1,000 homes per year, you know as well as I do, it's never going to be delivered. Those 1,000 homes are never going to be delivered in a single year. And if we actually put that up as an argument, we are just kidding ourselves. That is fact. I would put, if somebody wants to take my money, happy to take that. The actual sites that are coming forward, so we can't count them for 2 years, so we could have a whole host of applications that are approved, and they will be approved, because I can't see any way, until we have a change of administration, that there'll be any kickback on this. But they will be approved, so what we'll end up with a whole bunch of applications ready to go. There's no infrastructure with them. There'll be discussions where you're, as a planning department for the council, will talk to the the developers and ask for certain requirements. But the key infrastructures will be missing. So this is why consultation, Regulation 18, should come before housing development. And yeah, okay, if the inspector then says, well, I hear all that, and actually we have got a local plan, but you're right, it's very, very old. But the plan still exists. We've had this with with our council for the council, and he said if you don't have a new local plan, the old one is in existence. You don't put that aside, and yes, you'll tell me that it carries less weight, but it's there, it's out there, and it governs. So all of this stuff, I think, is it's hard to hear because we're not actually managing. What we're actually doing is just finding sites, getting those ready for application and approval, pushing them through without any regard to the residents of Basildon Borough or any regard to infrastructure. And that will be the thing that kills us. You can't mitigate some of them, yet you're putting in Billericay there's going to be 5,000 plus homes, yet you can't mitigate some of the roads in there. And this is why the consultation is so essential, so that you can get the expert feedback from people that actually live in the area. And so here we are agreeing a consultation 18 where it just becomes cart before the horse. And I don't understand it, because you guys are professional people. In any other respect, you would be saying, no, this is the way we do it, this is the procedure, this is the way it's laid out, and this is the way we do it. Yet we're having this argument or this discussion about why we don't actually need the Regulation 18 before we can have all these approvals come forward and we can slam them into development. And okay, they take 2 years. Let's see if they take 2 years, because some of the landowners may take a view where they don't want to build in 2 years. And then what? We have a land supply of 5 years that just drifts on and out and back, and we still won't have a local plan. So that's what I'm hearing.
So, Councillor Turner, I'd like to return on two of those things. I attended all the local plan consultation discussions and in person, and I spoke to residents, and I've spoken to also sites that are coming forward. I've been to all the consultation meetings with residents, and I can tell you in Billericay, what came over really clear in Billericay is the fact that there were people there that their children had nowhere to go. Their children were priced out because there's no new housing coming forward, and that was a frequent conversation we had. There was conversations about highways, and but every single application that has gone through planning, if you look at the package that was delivered in terms of both highway improvements and also in sustainable transport improvements, they were significant. So every application that we've looked at from a planning perspective has been through the Highway Authority, and now the Highway Authority has been given an additional help through the MPPF, because they can now look at the issues of cumulative impact that was looked at in all those applications. So in that respect, I feel the fact that we are aware of what happens with the fact that there is no development. I can give you another example of no development in the borough. We are dealing currently with Anglian Water. Anglian Water have got a water recycling centre in the borough, and Anglian Water weren't aware that Basildon was ever having a chance of growing and increasing its population. So Ofwat refused to grant a project to allow said water recycling centre to be upgraded. And that water recycling centre is now at capacity, because they didn't think that we ever were going to grow, and they didn't see the point of actually investing any money in it. So actually what the on cost of that are is if we have a serious flooding event in that area, then we have an environmental issue on our hands, because they weren't aware of the fact that we were going to grow. So actually the negative parts of not growing have a serious impact on our infrastructure, that if we'd had a local plan adopted in 2023, that matter would have been dealt with by now, and we wouldn't be having to consider as a local planning authority how we can mitigate the challenges now of that infrastructure that isn't caused by anything we're doing now. It's caused by lack of investment historically, because they didn't think we were going to have any increase in housing numbers. So actually, I think that there is a two-way process of looking at this, actually. The fact that we, as not having an indication of having any growth historically, has actually had an impact on our infrastructure going forward, which is why there's been no money put in our highways, which is why there's been no money put anywhere, because Basildon itself has not grown for such a long time in terms of significant housing growth that nobody wants to invest here. So actually, in terms of big infrastructure investment, so actually the local plan itself now has turned that conversation.
Mine's still here.
So so we're trying.
Lisa?
Oh, that's all.
Yeah.
Sorry. So, I mean, from our perspective as a local planning authority, and also as officers of the council, we are working hard to deliver a new local plan. We're working hard to deliver homes that told us that they really wanted, and we're also bringing infrastructure back to the borough, which is failing and needs to be improved because we've had no indication of growth historically. So actually, the local plan is needed because it's needed, and the fact that we've got stuff coming before the local plan, we are dealing with that up front. We are making sure that all the infrastructure requirements for that development is being dealt with. So we have to deal with those applications. We're not allowed to. If we refuse them, then we're going to be back at that appeal. It's not that anything goes as well. We refused an application was refused on Potash Road. That application was upheld. The petition was upheld on appeal. That appeal was dismissed because the local planning authority backed the position, the fact that site should never come forward for housing, and the inspector, right from the start, was very clearly against that development, that site as well. So I don't think it's a case of anything goes. It's a case of the fact that actually we have to deal with sites as they come forward, and the planning officers that are dealing with those sites are are amazing in terms of the amount of work they're having to do and the implications that's having on their workload, and actually bringing those sites forward the best they can do. And we are now looked upon as across the country respectfully by the development industry, because we are now looked at one of the best authorities for delivering PPAs and pre-apps and creating good developments. So I feel as if the fact that, you know, we're here to talk about the consultation, we're here to talk about how residents, our stakeholders and others have dealt with the work we've done to date. And all I can say is the fact that we've worked really hard to get to the stage we've got to. And from our perspective, that Regulation 18.3, which is the next consultation, will be the next steps in taking this forward and dealing with all the residents' comments that have come forward from this consultation. We have taken those forward into any amendments to policies. And then obviously the next step will be dealing with the refinement of those allocations, which obviously residents have commented on, and that will be taken through into Regulation 18.3 and then on to Regulation 19.
So just a few points there. First of all, you didn't speak to all the residents in Billericay. You spoke to a snapshot. And yes, of course, they're going to say about housing for their children. Yeah? Don't interrupt. So that's one thing. Secondly, the Highways Authority have mitigated as far as they can mitigate. It doesn't mitigate the issues around transport, highways and the like in Billericay. They've already acknowledged that. They've done what they can, but it isn't a silver bullet to cure Billericay's woes. And that would be absurd to say that, because you cannot get that highways infrastructure in Billericay to cure 5,000 homes, particularly around the station. You just can't do it. So nobody's arguing that we don't need housing. We get this argument every time. It's like a pushback on the Conservatives because we don't want to build houses. Far from it. We're happy to do that, but in the right context. And coming back to the consultation, just one point on the Water Authority. You say it like the local plan basically turned them off. What you're talking about is organisation, systemic failure. That's what you're talking about. It's nothing to do with the local plan. This has everything to do with the Water Board not being on top of their game, basically. The local plan doesn't just switch it on. And if you want to know why developers are looking at Basildon as an exemplary authority in this respect, is because suddenly we've opened the doors to the cookie cupboard, and they could come in with impunity and just build concrete across the Greenbelt. And they know they put up a planning application that meets the MPPF 50% affordable, then they are going to be approved. So all of these arguments are slightly mute. Coming back to the consultation.
So on that point, do you know how long it takes an officer to deal with a planning application of, let's say, Langdon Road West? That application takes about 18 months to come forward. So it's not a case of the fact that you submit an application to Basildon Council and Basildon Council then rubber stamps a planning application for you. Everything that we've done, especially in the local plan, is evidence-based. Everything we do in the local plan is clearly set out, and every planning application that comes to the council goes through a rigorous approach in terms of looking at everything. The first thing a developer has to do, and no other authority does this, the first thing we do when we get a pre-app or a PPA from a developer is we get all our consultants, because they pay for all our consultants, because we take a hefty fee off them, so we can buy really good consultants to deal with these applications alongside us. Ecologists, noise experts, every expert you can ask, we can get those in. We take them all out on site and we walk the site. So officers walk the site and they walk a huge area around the site to understand the context of that site. No other authority does that, and that's part of our process, our starting point. The starting point we do when we look at any application is the fact that that is done in the first instance. So it's not a case of the fact that nothing is ever rubber stamped. The officers spend an awful lot of time going over these applications and looking at how we can seek to reduce the impact, reduce the harm. We spend a lot of money looking at landscape value impact assessments. If you look at the Dunton Road application that went through, look at the considerations the inspector went in when we dealt with that, and the information that he had from the way we determined that application, which was way that he was able to make the decision that the council made in terms of the local planning authority our recommendation was the right decision based on the evidence that we had, even though the planning committee overturned that decision. So actually, I don't think it's a case of the fact that we aren't the cookie cupboard. I think the opposite. We charge an awful lot of money for PPAs. Developers have to pay usually about £100,000 for a PPA with this council. So it's not open the doors, come in and it's easy. That's before they even pay a planning application fee, and that does not guarantee a decision. That just guarantees the fact that what we get for this borough, and whether it goes to appeal or not go, or doesn't go to appeal, whether we approve it or not approve it, what this borough gets is the best schemes for this borough. And that's what developers are paying for, and that's what this local planning authority delivers for Basildon. And that's why, in terms of dealing with this consultation and the next steps in terms of the allocations, every single allocation that will come forward, we're already starting to draw up master plans. So we know exactly what can be delivered on those sites. We know the parameters, we know design codes. So actually, when they start to come forward, we were delivering for this council for the first time a very up-to-date local plan with some really significant allocations which can be delivered at a high quality. And alongside that, we've got Arup looking at now the infrastructure requirements that will then deliver those applications and deliver the local plan. The faster we can get this local plan through means that any applications will be then subject to that infrastructure delivery plan, and it will then have to start delivering that infrastructure. So the longer we spend at Reg 18, the longer we spend where we are at the moment, the more applications will be approved without that IDP in place. So what we need to be doing is to speeding up this, not going backwards over anything again, getting this to Regulation 18.3, to Regulation 19, and get this plan submitted.
I'm just.
Sorry, I accept.
I'm just going to come in there. I'm sorry,
Chairman.
Councillor Turner.
You're not chairman.
Councillor.
Let the chairman action her meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. So, I have a question based on what you said. You said that that during the consultation it was only a snapshot of Billericay that was captured. I just wanted to confirm with yourselves, the officers, that during the consultations that you said you went out to different various areas and you were part of every single plan that, you know, with the residents that took place. I just wanted to confirm that the amount of people that did attend the Billericay session was a sufficient amount to, you know, help you to get the figures that you have gotten, because I think what Councillor Turner is assuming is that you've only gotten an idea, or should I say complaints, from only very few residents, and it's not enough to highlight the issues that are in Billericay. But clearly from what you've said, there are other pressing issues that other residents have in Billericay. So I just wanted to just confirm that.
Okay, so the two rounds of consultation were held. The first consultation that we had, we received 9,194 contributions, and that came from 2,633 respondents.
Was this from Billericay alone?
This is from overall, from the whole approach. We also had 29,000, just over 29,000 visitors who came and looked at the platform and at the proposed plan, and we received 177 responses by letter or by email. Roughly 75% of the responses came from residents, with a small additional percentage come from people who work in the borough but do not live here. Then the second round of consultation was much more limited and focused in scope. It was only on a small number of policies. That one received 536 contributions from 272 respondents, and an additional 44 by letter or by email. So collectively, we received a significant engagement in the local plan. We also held a number of live events throughout the borough, including two in Billericay.
So it's fair to say that this is not just a snapshot, as Councillor Turner has assumed. And sorry, Councillor Turner, I just have a question for you. What is giving you this? Why do you think it's a snapshot?
So what they were referring to was, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, was the consultation where they went to Billericay Town Hall effectively and talked to the residents. We're not talking about the consultation that has received all that feedback. the statement was made, we went and spoke to Billericay residents, and that was good. And that, I'm going to be generous, that was 100 people. It was probably more like 60.
I haven't got the numbers. There were 2 events, and there was definitely more than 60 people there at those 2 events. We held the first event was not that well organised, and I think we had over the time I was there probably about 100 plus people through that. The second event was far better organised, and we ran it was a Q&A session. We had 3 of those over the night. And I think over the night we probably had, I reckon, probably about 150 people plus through the door. The idea of those events were initially supposed to be just about if you don't come and get a QR code. We weren't aiming them to be actually Q&A sessions, but following the feedback from the first session we had at Billericay, where I ended up doing a Q&A session completely off the cuff, we ended up doing a Q&A session. What that led to, which is then still on the website, was a really good question answer sheet, which as we went around the borough then, so we did one in Wickford, we did a number in within the new town. What that ended up with, that Q&A sheet got bigger and bigger and bigger and was put on the website. So actually residents had an easier sort of summary of a lot of the questions we were being asked. And actually the questions that we were asked, and we had everyone write on yellow stickies a question if they wanted me to answer a question, and they were the same questions that we had at every place. So the questions were around where can my children go to live? The questions were around highways, which is a big one. Questions around schools, the NHS. So they were basically the 4 main questions that we got asked, and we just basically we had the same responses. It's really strange that we've been at a site in Bowers Gifford recently for again a site that's coming forward, the local plan there, and again the same questions were asked there. So it's quite, those are the 4 same things that we get asked every time.
Thank you. Okay. Yes, that's fine.
So in answer to the question, no, that's not enough. That's not a sample big enough to draw any conclusions. And that is fact. Yeah, not my fact, that is fact. Can I just clarify? I'm not for one moment casting aspersions on your professionalism. I think you will do exactly the professional job that is required of you. And I'm glad to hear that you go through it in spades that way. What I was referring to are developers, and I've spoken to a few. They are now saying, happy days, Basildon's basically opened the doors to the cookie cupboard. That's their expression. There's no, once you get past that professional review, your thorough professional review, they know at the end of it there's an approval waiting. And there won't be any discussion on that. They know it comes before a Labour committee, and that's the rubber stamping. And all I'm saying, coming back to the consultation, bringing it back, is that it's the cart before the horse. We haven't done things properly. We haven't gone through the procedure properly. We're in a mad rush to get 30,000 homes built. And I don't know, is there any evidence? I've asked this question before. Is there any evidence behind the 30,000? I don't think there is. I think it's an arbitrary number that we've been given by central government. So there's nothing that is actually saying Basildon Borough needs 30,000 homes. And all you're going to do is you're going to create demand for migration. Yeah, wherever that comes from, London, Scotland, wherever it comes from. So we're in a mad rush to provide housing, and not for Basildon Borough, but for other people, and other people get it. And I've had this discussion online with Councillor Power, who thinks the piece of paper that says we can't market for 12 months is going to be a panacea to stop people coming and buying houses. It never was, and it never will be. It will happen. So these are the fallacies that we're trying to cheat Basildon Borough residents. People need housing, absolutely. Do we need to house the whole of the nation for those that want to come to the borough? No, we don't. And what we're kidding ourselves is, if we build all this housing, and I don't know, perhaps you can tell me, if we build 500 houses, what do we get? 100 and something houses given to the council as of 106?
Can I just come in there quickly before you, Councillor? I just wanted to also ask. Councillor Turner is obviously saying, opening the cookie jar and all of these things, but doesn't the figures? Well, I'm asking for clarification. The figures and the concerns that have been brought forward from the residents when this local plan was carried out shows that there is a need for residents to take up spaces in these homes, and obviously with the and there is a need for housing, because we have, as a councillor, I get a lot of emails regarding housing from residents that are in Airbnb and bed and breakfast and all of those type of things. There is a need for that. So I just wanted to clarify, and also to clarify for Councillor Turner, that these homes that are built are not just for the random people that you're saying. Okay, because that's the message. It's the vibe that I'm getting. So I just wanted to clarify that.
It's not a vibe.
So I mean,
and you know it's not.
So if we go back to the decision the council made to withdraw the local plan, the council were already in intervention, many things, do intervention for lack of a local plan. So we're already under intervention for lack of a local plan, and MHCLG were already talking to us on the fact that, actually, due luck, they weren't MHCLG then, they were already talking to us about speed of our next plan making. And obviously, once we withdrew the local plan, they were straight on to us, and they required us to produce a new local development scheme which set out our plan making. And the grounds of that new local plan had to be that we met our housing requirements. So that was a given in terms of our position, and that's what protected the council at that point from. They were looking for a local authority, and we were very close to being intervened on at that point. They were looking for a local authority to come and intervene on, and I think we would have been the next one to have been intervened on, because we'd had failed attempts at a local plan, and that's what we were told at the time. Authorities, the same as us in intervention, have all been told that they have to deliver on their housing numbers, and that's where we are now. The housing numbers are 27,000. They're not 30,000. They're 27,000, and that's what we have to. That's what we're seeking to deliver on. So that's what's been put in front of us, and that's what this council, in terms of this council will be delivering a plan that meets our housing numbers, and will be delivered in the next. Hopefully, it will be submitted to the planning inspectorate this time next year for considerations, and hopefully by the end of next year we have a local plan in place that will then start delivering the houses and the infrastructure set out in the delivery plan that Councillor Turner is very clear to see.
Okay, thank you, because I just wanted to clarify that for those that are viewing from home, so that they're very clear. So I'm gonna. Can I just? I'll get back to you, but can I just?
I was in full flow when you interrupted me.
Sorry.
Okay.
Officer,
Yeah, I was just going to say that the 27,111 is standard method. It's national policy, as you're aware. But also, some of your points are referring to the age of the current plan, being from 1998, and the fact that it's out of date. There's been significant changes to national policy since that time. The council still only builds about 300 homes a year. There was no viability testing back in the 90s. That's why, compounding the fact with things like the presumption in favour of sustainable development now, the council loses a lot of appeals. The land supply issue, that was irrelevant back in the 90s, so the current plan is not fit for purpose, and we have to change that. I think in terms of the standard method, is it 11,000?
Including the buffer that we're required to apply 1,280 per annum.
Yeah. Then also the numbers of teenagers.
10,000.
Yeah, concealed households.
10,000.
Yeah.
18 to 30 year olds.
18 to 30 year olds. Yeah. The 27,000 is almost swallowed up already by people that need housing. That's the evidence of the scale of the need, because the completions are so low, and that's the challenge there is now, in short.
Councillor Turner.
just coming back, so you think that the government were going to send in and intervene. There was absolutely no chance of that. There was sabre rattling. And I can tell you that for the fact because we had Essex MPs met with the Secretary and was given the assurance that that wouldn't happen. So, yes, it might have looked like it, and Michael Gove sent a letter to say that. There was never any chance of that ever happening. Coming back to the numbers, I mean, I hear what you say about the local plan, but the local plan still exists. It's as simple as that. That's fact in law. And moving forward, yes, we've got to get a local plan. Nobody's saying we're not going to get it. But the method we're going by is to put out the applications time and time again without the consultation, without anything else in place. And as I said before, I don't disbelieve, and I certainly don't want to cast aspersions on a professional planning department. I think you do an absolute thorough job in that respect. But developers are coming to Basildon for one reason and one reason only, and that is because they can get these applications through. Yes, they have to jump through the hoops and tick the boxes, and that's all going to happen. You know, at the end of it, we've heard it in full council that this is going to cure our housing problem. No. At the end of it, you might still end up with 2,000, 5,000, it might be more, because we're going to create demand in the borough, so it's entirely likely that the housing list will get longer, not shorter. And coming back to and this is why the consultation has to come before housing. We have to get all of that consultation out there. You've already mentioned about the water. Who else is out there? We know NHS England are not brilliant at planning. We've seen it over many, many years. But there can't be in any doubt about where the growth is coming because we've been talking about it for so long. We've been planning for it for so long. My hesitation tonight is about what comes first. And you can't arguably deny, that consultation should be front and centre in the process before we get to all this 18-month work on planning approval. And if we are, then what we're doing here tonight is nothing more than lip service. And I think certainly we talk to people in Billericay, more than enough people, to see that that's the feeling they get. It's just being lip service by a Labour-led administration that is hell-bent on just dumping these houses, come what may. And yes, the applications, the sites, they'll be thoroughly tested professionally by good officers. But at the end of it, that's what they're going to get, housing dumped on them. And in years to come, it won't be the developers that pick up the legacy. It will be us. I've lived in the borough for all of my life, 63 years. I've seen the changes. Not all of them have been good. We've had to regenerate 5 different parts of town because the planning process got it wrong there. And we've had to rejig that. And my concern is now that we're just making those same mistakes again in the haste to provide housing. And that, I'm not saying that housing is not needed, but I would like to think that we would get it right. And I'm hearing that perhaps we're not, and we're going to make the same mistakes. Infrastructure won't be mitigated. You know, come a day when the 5,000 are turning up at Billericay Station, there is no mitigation you can give for that. Whether they can provide enough trains to deal with the commute is another matter. But I'm not hell-bent on supporting this process. So as far as what I've heard, I'm not convinced, and I'll certainly be voting against the consultation until such time as we want to put a stake in the ground that literally says, okay, let's do it as it was meant to be. Let's go through the process it was meant to be. And we'll have to deal with the Secretary of State for Housing and try and convince them that this process was set in place for a reason. So that's my position. Thank you.
Thank you. Can Councillor Harrison come in? He's been waiting for quite a while. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just before the officers respond to Councillor Turner, I just want to correct him on a few quick things. I mean, he says about the planning committee, which I sit on, and I declared that in declarations of interest. Obviously, we, I would like to point out that we take every application on its basis. He calls it a Labour. He calls it a Labour committee. Obviously, it's chaired by an independent member, and just at the last meeting, we rejected an application on Greenbelt because of overdevelopment. So the idea that the committee just votes everything through without consultation or anything like that is completely wrong. And what Councillor Turner just mentioned about the about even if we build everything, there may still be a 4,000 or 5,000 deficit at the end. That's a hell of a lot better than the what did we just work it out as sort of 23,000 that we currently have. So the idea of the idea that we shouldn't try because we won't get there anyway is completely ridiculous. But I'll allow officers to respond to his points now.
Thank you.
So, Councillor Joseph, the reason this matter has been brought to scrutiny is to look at the responses to that consultation, and obviously officers spent a considerable amount of time going through the consultation, and they're from our residents and from obviously other statutory consultees and other consultee responses, and they've gone through all those. So really, the idea of bringing this to scrutiny was not to talk about things that we haven't done, to talk about things that we have done, and obviously that's what officers have spent a lot of time drafting the report that sets this out. In terms of the report, is the highlight of that, and then the other remaining 500 pages go into the depths of all that work that they've done, and I think that it gives officers a disservice in terms of the fact that talking very high level about what we haven't done is quite difficult when what we have done is actually very in depth and actually does provide and even the high level work that they've done, it sets out there are some proposed actions coming from those consultation responses, and that obviously is what this is about. This is about you said we did. Residents or a statutory consultee or due to cooperate partner said something, and we've done something in response to that. So that's what we have to remember, what we're looking at tonight. We're not looking at something we haven't done or we should have done. We're actually coming here to scrutinise a report before it goes to before it goes to full council, to cabinet, to actually address our response as a local planning authority to all those consultation responses. And that's what we're talking about, and that's what I think we've gone off on a sort of like a wild goose chase talking about other things, when actually the officer spent a considerable amount of time pulling all that together. And that's what I think is that we should be focusing on, is actually, have you got anything to say with regards to the proposed actions following those comments we've had from the consultees and our residents that have thought about responding. We had 29,000 people looked at our platform. We had a number of responses to our platform, and that's what's important. And then we had a number of responses from our statutory consultees and a number of responses from other parties, and that's what's formed the report in front of you. And that's what's really important, and that's we want to make our residents sure that we are scrutinising properly tonight to make sure that you're happy that they've said we've done, and that's what this is about.
Okay, so that will now lead me to one of the questions that I actually did have for tonight before we sort of like diverted. So we've increased housing numbers significantly. How are we ensuring that our infrastructure and green space ambitions are not just maintained but enhanced under this new plan?
So if I take the infrastructure first of all, so following this exercise, we've looked at the proposed draft allocations, and we've agreed and we've pointed ARUP to undertake an infrastructure delivery plan. They are currently developing a baseline on the development, the actual housing numbers we anticipate coming forward and where they will be. Towards the end of this month, they'll start engaging with all the relevant infrastructure providers, including the NHS, Essex County Council is the highway, and the Education Authority, etc. And that will put together into an infrastructure delivery plan. So that plan sets out what infrastructure is required to deliver each allocation, when it's required, and it will set out how it will be funded, so which areas are expected to contribute towards it. The infrastructure delivery plan will be published for further Regulation 18 consultation, which we anticipate being the end of this year. I'd hand over to my colleague on the Greenbelt matter, unless there's any questions on that.
Yeah, so we've commissioned a grey and Greenbelt update. That will, it uses the 2023 Greenbelt study as its baseline, but it takes account of the changes introduced in the December 2024 NPPF and also the Greybelt PPG of February. What that will do is to identify all areas of the borough that meet the government's definition and score either poor or moderate against purposes A, B and D of the 5 Greenbelt purposes. That's quite significant because of the changes that have been introduced through national policy. It will also identify those areas then that will be subject to the golden rules, 50% affordable housing, but importantly as well where Greybelt is going to be cited by developers, it doesn't override the need for schemes to again hit other policy requirements. So it's not that it's carte blanche for development if something's on Greybelt, but the government do intend that that's a category of land that should be earmarked more favourably for development. Hence its introduction into the lexicon.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, sticking to the agenda, just looking at the pie charts from page 275 onwards on the site allocations, and there's not a huge amount of sort of context around these. There's you know, some of them are quite alarming, I would say. But I mean, there's no information about how many people responded to these specific applications. For example, I'd imagine that you know, take the first one, Southeast Billericay. There's a large proportion of it is strong disagree, but I have no idea if that's 60 people out of the 70 that responded to it, or if 20,000 people responded to the specific one, in which case that would obviously be a much larger proportion of the total population. So I just want to sort of get a sense of how these pie charts were put together and how representative they are of the entire population of the area.
We can take that away and provide that information for each of the draft allocations, if that's something that Scrutiny thinks would be valuable.
Yeah, I think that would, because just to get a bit of context around, because and also, for example, was this consultation only available to residents in this specific area that will be directly affected by it, or is it the entirety of Basildon? For example, if an action group of some kind sort of said we want to oppose these specific ones, then somebody from Langdon could be sat there opposing a Billericay application that they have no direct interest in, and so forth. So yeah.
Okay. So all allocations were open to anyone who wished to respond to the consultation. As I said, I think it's just over 76% of the responses came from residents, but that's open to residents anywhere within the area. I would say generally a lot of residents commented on all, however not in all cases. So we can provide the numbers. We asked residents to provide a postcode when they responded, which was for our understanding of this matter as well. But generally speaking, an actual support for a location, we take anybody's views. Does that help clarify?
Yeah, that is helpful, and if you would be able to sort of provide the numbers, that would be even more helpful. Thank you.
I have another question. So can officers clarify how delivery risks, particularly funding and phasing, have been reflected in the plan assumptions, and what lessons have we learnt from past plans that weren't delivered in full?
because of the age of the previous local plan, it didn't have an awful lot of allocations within it. So it had there was a number of areas which were left for future redevelopment, and that's obviously Dry Street was one of those, and we've obviously got the site in Wickford, that Barn Hall, which again was a future development site. The only site in the previous plan that wasn't delivered, and that was the Gardens Lane South development, and that was subject to a comprehensive development area back in the I worked this as a young planner in the late 80s. Sorry, that site has remained undeveloped for the last 40 years. So that site wasn't brought forward. Has only been brought forward recently. That has had some small redevelopment on it, but that's actually now, I think it's H25 in the emerging plan. That's within the urban area, and that one is a Homes England scheme. So in terms of going forward, we actively work to prevent that disaster happening again. We actually work with obviously Homes England and other One Public Estate to see where we can get grant funding from to bring schemes forward, and also to help developers bring schemes forward. There is grant funding available for affordable housing, which a number of developers now are strategic partners with Homes England on. And obviously you've seen ourselves in terms of delivering Chapelgate, which obviously is part funded with Homes England funding, as is Broadmain and obviously Tie Fields. So that shows you that we can deliver the schemes that are coming forward so far with developers. Again, there is a lot of challenge around delivering 50% affordable housing, but again, they are talking to partners and to providers in terms of registered providers to deliver the social housing on the sites. So we will ensure that the schemes are all come forward, and where they can, we will assist in terms of getting any grant funding to assist those schemes.
Yeah, if I could just assist on that point as well. What my colleague is saying, there's a lot more granularity detail that's expected now than was the case when the adopter plan was prepared back in the 1990s. That also helps in examination and demonstrating compliance with the test of soundness. So again, we have to do much more as a team. All planning authorities do, but more is expected. But then there's more transparency as well as a consequence of that.
Thank you. Does anyone have any more questions? Oh, Councillor Moore.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. I noticed that the first round of consultation was held between the 18th of November and the 12th of January, with the new MPPF being published on December the 12th, 2024. And the second consultation was held February the 24th to April the 14th. So I'm concerned that although the new MPPF was published on December the 12th, Annex 1, paragraph 234 of the new MPPF clearly states that, and I quote, "For the purposes of preparing local plans, the policies in this version of the framework will apply from March the 12th, 2025. So advice on the role of the green belt in the planning system was published by MHCLG on February the 27th, 3 days after the limited second round consultation was issued. The government also published guidance on February the 27th for the effective use of land and for housing and economic needs. In summary, the government's guidance on greenbelt, natural environment, plan making, effective use of land and housing and economic needs assessments were all published after the Regulation 18 consultation had completed on January the 12th, and after the limited second round consultation which started on February the 24th. Therefore, Madam Chairman, do you think the results from the two consultations were compromised by the late guidance from government, and do you think respondents to the consultation may have been misled by the contents of the consultation compared to the new MPPF and the MPPF guidance? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Officers, do you have an answer to that question?
So, in terms of where we've got to, we would be at risk, Councillor Moore, if we were approaching a Regulation 19 consultation. So if we weren't planning to do a third Regulation 18 consultation, we would be at risk. And you're quite right. Quite agree with you. We're at risk. This consultation has got weight. This consultation is part of the process of creating a local plan that has a number of consultation approaches. We are doing another consultation, Regulation 18.3, which will then address the issues that you've raised in terms of any change to the Greenbelt. It will deal with that through our allocations. It will allow us to update any policies. It will allow us to update our evidence base. And Regulation 18.3 will be the final Regulation 18 document that will be brought forward. What that will then see is the fact that the Regulation 19 will be a document that we will be able to take through being lawful and sound, and that's what we have to get to. You were quite right. If we were going straight to Reg 19, we would be at risk, and I think you were quite right there, Councillor Moore, of which we're not, and that's part of why we're working with Council on making sure that we ensure that we are correct through this process.
Do you have any more questions?
Yes, thank you for that. I have a couple of other questions regarding the statement of consultation. If you look at pages 3 to 6, there's a lot of abbreviations, and this is a public document, and I think it would be helpful if there was a glossary to explain what ECC means, BBLP, IOCP, MPPF, and so on. The pie charts, as Councillor Harrison has pointed out, have no key, so I'm not sure it was clear what red, yellow, orange, light green and dark green actually means.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. In regards to those concerns, they have been highlighted in the meeting that we had internally. I wouldn't know. Yes, I understand. That's why I'm answering you. So it will be in the amended paper for the general public. But thank you. Please.
There's a section called Basildon Agreed Next Steps. Page 23. New evidence from specialist and supporting housing has been commissioned and is expected to be delivered in July 202. That needs correcting. Then there are a number of actions or agreed next steps which are under review, and it's pages 46 to 91. This doesn't meet the statement in the executive summary that, and I quote it, the statement of consultation summarises the responses received and the actions Basildon Council proposes to take to develop the next iteration of the local plan. Well, there's a ton of stuff that is under review, so I don't think you can actually say that. And finally, the limited second round of consultation, providing new and updated policies to be read in conjunction with all previous consultation stages. It's difficult for the public to read in conjunction with all previous consultation statements, when the first stage of the consideration of the consultation was actually closed online. So if you went on stage 2, you couldn't get back to stage 1 and to even see what you individually had put in. Just a couple of points, that's all.
Thank you. Does any of the councillors want to clarify that?
Yeah, in respect of accessing the first stage of the consultation, that is now available again. It was closed down temporarily to avoid confusion while we were undergoing the stage 2 consultation by having tolls that were no longer available open. The 2002, yes, that is a typo. It should be 2025. And regarding the evidence, the actions that are under review, as part of this process, we've commissioned a number of additional pieces of evidence which are currently being prepared. So those consultation responses, we note them, but we can't make a full decision at this time until all the relevant evidence is prepared and available. So that will feed into the third round of consultation in due course.
Thank you, Officer. Do you have any more questions? Yes, Councillor.
18.3, when is it going to be published?
So that'll be November.
November this year?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
And once the plan progresses to Regulation 19, what performance indicators or governance structures are in place to monitor delivery, and how will this committee be involved in tracking this?
Regulation 19 is the next consultation, and then what happens there is then that consultation happens, and then we just send all the information off until that consultation response goes to the planning inspector. What happens then is he will arrange an examination in public. So we may get further questions from the inspector. He'll arrange an examination, and that will be usually about 6 to 8 weeks. And then what happens after the examination is that he will go away, and he may come back and ask us for some modifications to our plan, or he may come back with some additional questions. He may then reopen the examination in public and hear additional evidence, or he may tell us to go away and do a further consultation on some changes he wants to the plan. That will then come back, and eventually we'll get a letter from him, a decision letter very similar to like appeal decision, that will be from him, and it will hopefully be allowing us to, it will be then finding our plan sound, and we will then bring that plan back to full council for, cabinet, and then full council for adoption. Once a plan's adopted, within every local plan, there is a monitoring side of it as well. So the plan itself will set out how we're going to monitor that, and that will be updated. We already update members through the housing figures, and also it will come back to this committee also for employment. They'll come back here as well, and also we can bring in improvements to infrastructure will come back at the same time. So it's all monitored through the local plan itself, but actually we can bring those all back on a usually a 12-month basis, so you can have a look at how the plan's progressing.
Councillor, just very quickly as well, it would be worth noting that Regulation 19, although the plan will come back to scrutiny for member input on anything, changes to policies, when it goes public, it concentrates only on the legal aspect and soundness. So it's not an opportunity to make changes in that sense, but also once that consultation concludes, changes are made, and then that plan is then submitted to PINS for examination. What happens in terms of the dates is totally out of the council's control at that point. It's the planning inspector that sets the timetable.
Thank you, Officer. Do we have any more questions? Okay, thank you, officers, for the report. It's very thorough, and I did enjoy reading through the many pages. But yes. Should we move on to the next item? Which is
page 547.
Yes, page 547, the work plan.
Yeah.
Yes. So these are just the work programs that have been brought to us, and just wanted to know if anyone wanted to add anything else to what is on here already. Councillors? Councillor Harrison?
Thanks, Chair. The officers mentioned earlier that the next stage will be going out in November. Will there be an update on that on the 3rd of December? Will that be too early to report back on?
Yeah, it will be too early. We'll be in the middle of the consultation at that time.
Councillor Joseph, on the 25th of September, if we could add the town centre master plan Regulation 19 document to that as well. So it would basically be the same as but with Regulation 19 rather than Regulation 18. So that's the Town Centre Master Plan for Basildon Town Centre.
Thank you, officer. Does anyone else?
Yeah, just so we don't have precise dates for the consultation start and closure at this point, but the 3rd of December will be too early.
Thank you. If no one has anything else to say, I think we're done here for today. Have a great, have a great evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out.